Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. I want to thank all of the new subscribers. I know you are interested in breaking down these PSYOPs. And I tell you, it's getting kind of easier by the day because the media is so very sloppy with these productions. It's the same old scripts, the same old bad actors, the same old agendas. And you're asking me, Peggy, how do you do your research? How do you come up with this information? Because yesterday I did a video here on the channel, and that was all about the Brown and Bondi incidents. Let me go to the channel here. Let me find that for you. Here we have it. And here we go. It's just absolutely outrageous. I broke down with my own research, my own images, my own links. I brought you a half an hour video yesterday, a deep dive into these PSYOPs. Now, actually, I did more of a deep dive into the Brown incident, as I'm going to call it. And I showed you these smiling witnesses. I broke down some of the characters, like the mayor of Providence, and he is involved in these new anti-Semitic actions. And also I talked about the president of the university and how she is all a part of the New World Disorder. And I really appreciate all of your comments. I mean, I've got over 10,000 views on this video and hundreds of comments, and I can't reply to everybody, but I really do appreciate hearing from you. And a lot of times people are asking me, Peggy, how are you doing this? Because I don't use AI, and I rarely look at, I always try to look at the original research. In other words, I do my own researching. I don't have a staff. I'm the one that's creating these videos, producing them, editing them, and so forth. So all of those images I found on my own. I went to the media's interviews with these witnesses. And then I so appreciate the information that you all send me over at support@thehealthyamerican.org. And I did share with you regarding Bondi Beach, a really well-produced video that summarized much better than I could what is going on and why that incident in particular you should be skeptical about and why it doesn't add up. So on a rare occasion, I will broadcast someone else's video, but I do my own research, and people are asking me, how do you do that? How do you know what to look for? How do you know where to research? And that's what this video is going to be about. So if you want all of the details that I shared about the Brown incident and the video that I shared about the Bondi, that's not this video. That's a broadcast I did for you Monday. This channel, I'm broadcasting Mondays and Wednesdays. And then on Fridays, I'm over at my second channel called Living Swell with Peggy Hall, where we leave the headlines behind and we talk about living fully and freely. And that's all about you. So I hope you'll join me 5 p.m. Pacific over there. What we're going to talk about today, and actually I made a few notes because I want to make sure that I stay on track. And this is why, because people ask me, why are you even doing this? Well, it drives me bonkers when people fall for things, and I can't stand to be hoodwinked myself. And so I like to dig deeper to make sure that the bad guys are not pulling a fast one on me. And then how do I do that? So basically, whenever something grabs the headlines and the media won't let it go, that is a tip off right off the bat that the story is intentionally being promoted and being promoted for propaganda. I like to spell that and pronounce that pro-pagan. Duh, if you break down that word, that's what it's spelled like. And propaganda can be defined as information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a particular cause, a doctrine, or a point of view. And that's what I call the agenda, right? That is the narrative. And remember, the main reason that the mainstream media merry-go-round even exists, it's not to bring you news, it's to promote a certain perspective and a certain narrative to further specific agendas. So the narrative is the storyline. When you hear people saying, oh, that's the narrative, or they're pushing that narrative, it's basically the story that they are spinning. It's the way that the media spins a topic. The narrative is how the story is framed so that you will see it and interpret it the way that the media wants you to. And the number one rule of the media's narrative is you should never question what you're being shown or told. And sadly, many people go along with that. I mean, let me know if you're like me and people call you a conspiracy theorist, or they will call you insensitive. And, how dare you? These people are hurting. They just lost a loved one. And I know I get it all the time. I get a lot of backlash on this channel when I spoke about the October 7th event of 2023 in the Middle East. Oh, I had tons of people unsubscribing. Just a quick tip. When you go back months or even weeks later following one of these shock and awe emotionally charged events, usually you can see things in a different light, because the media will trot out the most horrendous, heinous narrative in order to hijack your thinking mind so that you're not thinking clearly. In fact, you're not thinking at all. You're just feeling. You're seeing these images that on any other given day, you'd go, this doesn't add up. This looks really weird. Why are these witnesses smiling? Why do these people look like it's staged? Why does that blood look fake? Why is there no blood coming from the bandage? You would be questioning these things. Well, you probably do. But by and large, people are swept away by their emotions. So when you go back and look at these images later, I challenge you to go do that on the October 7th event, especially if you believe that what you were shown was real and that it was not AI and that it was not propaganda and it was not used to promote a narrative and an agenda. I promise you, at any of these events, you go back and look and you'll go, oh, wow, that just doesn't look right. Sadly, we are bombarded with these images of the smiling witnesses and the dry-eyed, survivors of loved ones. And you start to think that that's how people react. I've had several people leave comments saying, well, you know what, Peggy, I think that's how college students do react these days. No, actors react that way because they're excited about their paycheck. But I reject the notion that an actual thinking, feeling person is not going to have authentic emotions. I had a woman say, Peggy, I was held at gunpoint and I was robbed, and I can still remember the gun being pressed into me. And she said, I was never the same. Even if I tried to act normal, people could see in my eyes that I had been through something harrowing. So that leaves a mark, friends. Don't fall for that narrative that, oh, everybody grieves differently and it's just because they're college students. No, it's because they're actors who are being paid. So the number one rule of the media is do not question, and of the powers that shouldn't be. Do not question what you're being told. And if you're questioning it, you're going to be ridiculed. And you're going to be called insensitive and a conspiracy theorist and cynical. Well, as for me, I would rather be cynical than gullible. And sadly, the powers that shouldn't be, the New World Disorder, the bad guys, the puppet masters, they get away with what they get away with precisely because there are so many gullible people who don't want to be bothered, who don't want to be questioned, and who are led around by their emotions. And fearful, emotional people are easier to control, and they will beg for the prison bars. They'll beg to be enslaved because they think that's going to bring them safety. Somehow, I don't fall into that category, and I have a feeling you don't either. So I question everything. It's just how God made me. I have an inquisitive nature. I am curious. I love to figure things out. And mainly, I don't want to be duped. I don't want to be swindled. I don't want to be hoodwinked and bamboozled. I would rather acknowledge that somebody tried to pull the wool over my eyes than to go along with it and say, some people are insecure and they don't want to admit that they were duped because it will make them appear as though they weren't savvy enough. Well, I would rather say, oh my gosh, they pulled a fast one on me, and then keep my eyes alert for the next time so that I'm not bamboozled. That's how I see it. So if a story is being promoted relentlessly in the mainstream media, my default is that the story is manufactured and manipulated. So I don't believe what the media is reporting, period. And I don't have to prove that the story is false, fake, phony, and fraudulent. It's not up to me to prove that. It's up to the media to prove that what they're reporting is true and factual and accurate. They're the ones providing the information. So when people say to you, well, what do you think happened to Charlie Kirk? It's not up to me to say what happened to him, but I can look at the evidence of no blood, no bullet, no burial, no medical report, the flimsy story that his bodyguards whisked him away. That is so against protocol. If someone is injured, you don't move them. You call for an ambulance. You never rush an injured person to the hospital in your own car. First of all, you don't know where the hospitals are. You don't know the roads. You can't run through red lights. You can't speed like ambulances can, and you can't administer first aid like the paramedics can in an ambulance. So right from the get-go, I don't need to know anything else about that story other than to know that's the smoking gun. That's the red flag. Anything else you tell me, show me is going to be predicated by that false, flimsy, fake reaction. And when people are exposed to a gunshot sound or they see something, it takes a moment for it to register. They all went into this rehearsal mode. So you know that it was rehearsed. They even said that they had their roles to play and that they didn't want to get in the way of people playing their roles. These are what the Turning Point people said. So I don't have to prove where Charlie Kirk is. The media has to prove that what they say is true. By the way, speaking of smoking guns, let me divert your attention for just a moment, because you said, Peggy, how come you didn't cover the National Guard? I didn't need to cover the National Guard story. I hope you already know that one didn't add up. But here's a smoking gun for me right here. Let me know, do you see what I see? National Guard member killed in DC shooting remembered for a heart of gold. Well, they'll always tug on our heartstrings, and there's always some kind of story where the person was just engaged or they had just dropped off their child, or then the child found a note from the parent. You know, they're always going to spin that. But what do you see here? This right here is a giant tell. It's the smoking gun. It's the red flag. Even if I don't dig into the story, and I didn't need to dig into the story because I already knew right before Thanksgiving, I already knew it wasn't going to add up. But this is the calling card for me. Let me see if you guys are leaving any comments. I know that the live stream is a little bit delayed. Okay, does anybody see what I see about that image? The name and the whatever that is, the words are backwards. Out of all the images that the media could find, they played this one over and over and over again. Backward images are used in the occult. It is a calling card. And you're going to say, there you go again, Peggy, blowing things out of proportion. Well, I beg to differ. There you go again, not acknowledging clues when they're presented in front of you. Out of all of the images that could be shown, this is the one that has the occult backwards writing. And then later they tried to cover their tracks and they flipped the image and we're told, oh, it's a selfie. Yeah, right. That's exactly. You got a selfie off her phone. How did you get that? Who gave it to you? How did you get it so quickly? None of these things are ever answered for us. And I also shared with you in the Brown incident that out of all the images they could have shown for Brown University itself, their newspaper, showed the infinity sign, the Ouroboros, another occultic satanic image that, yes, had all of these images, signs, symbols, numbers, can be innocent. And we've gone over this ad infinitum again and again and again. But for people who are new to the channel, all of these things can be innocent, but they can also be usurped and used as a tell, as a calling card. Out of all of the images for the Brown incident, they show the infinity sign. Has nothing to do really with the college itself, other than to signal to the elite that this was an elite operation, aside from all of the smiling witnesses and other things. So these are speaking of smiling witnesses, again, if you're on this channel because you want to see some of the clues that I've covered, that's in my other video. This is also on my Substack. So you can go to peggyhall.substack.com. And I found this interview with this woman that we were told was at another shooting in California. And she would not be looking like that if that was the second time she had a life and death situation. It's just not possible unless they're psychopaths. Here's another one. And people were telling me, oh yeah, this woman said that she went into the wood shop class. Oh yeah, like there's really a wood shop class at an Ivy League university. Brown University is going to have wood shop that you can pay $100,000 a year to take that class. There are so many holes in the story that don't add up. When you go back and watch, as I say, later, then it will become more clear to you because the emotions will have been set aside. So the media never actually proves their stories. In fact, they spin them and they confuse you and they give conflicting information. And think about, like, I don't go to circuses, but what circuses have are clowns, and clowns are there to distract you when something goes astray. So if somebody fell off the tightrope, or there's a magic show and you've got, the clown going by, or the clowns are there to distract the audience. The clowns are always the suspects in these incidents. Remember in Charlie Kirk, there was another crisis actor who showed up, and he was one of the first suspects. And the police were tackling him, and people were saying, "That's him, get him, get him." All the while, that's the clown to distract you while they were taking down the cameras and taking Charlie off, or maybe putting him down a hole, who knows. I'm less interested in all of that than to just help people understand that it was a staged event. So in this one, they also had the suspect at large, the gunman at large. These are all of the tired old clues. They really need better script writers. But the thing is, they don't need better script writers because the media preys upon people that are unable to use critical thinking. They never developed it. Maybe they've had too much fluoride, or too many vaccinations, or too much junk food, or too many antidepressants, or whatever the case may be. They've been mesmerized and manipulated by the media for so long, they just believe it. Remember a few weeks ago, I replayed a video from back in the Cooties Hogwash days, 2020, when I gave a very impassioned public presentation at the farmers market, telling the vendors that they didn't have to be afraid of losing their stalls, that they could sell to people. In fact, they were required to sell to people that were breathing oxygen. Otherwise, it would be a violation of the law. And one of the vendors from another country, who you'd think would have come here for freedom, was arguing with me saying, "Don't you watch the news? I saw it on the news. People are dying." He literally said that again and again. "I saw it on the news. Don't you watch the news?" That told me everything I need to know. It's so sad. So the media will hijack people's thinking by hijacking their emotions. So the media floods us with fear-mongering, emotionally driven narratives, red herrings, like these suspects that are never going to be found. There's two, there's one, they were wearing this, no, they were here. And people are riveted to it, like they're, like they want to be Columbo, only they're not looking for the right clues. And then, of course, there's the confusing, the conflicting information, storylines that we've seen over and over again with the same old script writers, the unbelievable witnesses, meaning they cannot be believed, the victims that are smiling and dry-eyed, like Eric Kirk on her promotional tour. Who's minding the children? I thought she was like the model wife and mother. Who's taking care of the children as she's on this whole merry-go-round of interviews, flashing those gigantic diamond-encrusted gold Masonic occult rings with tissues dabbing at dry eyes? I'm sure there's some kind of witchcraft that she's spinning with those gestures. So, I mean, come on. Even people that believed her in the beginning are starting to say, enough already with the interviews. Where are your children? Well, fake children, I should say. The media leaves the obvious calling cards and tells, as I just showed you with that DC shooting, and they mock and ridicule the masses. I think that's why I do this. I will not stand to be mocked and ridiculed. I would rather point this out, have people mock and ridicule me that don't see it because they just haven't developed the skills yet. But I'm not going to be mocked and ridiculed by the powers that shouldn't be, the New World disorder. I'm going to stand up and point it out like the emperor has no clothes. That's why I do this. And I'm going to show you exactly how I do my research. So stick with me. There's always the same talking points again and again, and the people sound like they're reading off a script. So that guy from Bondi Beach tells us that he was shot in the head, yet the bandage is dry. He was able to take a selfie. He was able to flag down the media. Forget about going to the hospital for a head wound that looked like, was it Trump? I know some of you believe that narrow escape. Look at it again, friends, now that time has gone by. Look, I'm not after Trump. I'm not after Eric Kirk. I'm after the truth. So these talking points are so obvious. And these college students are being coached to read these scripts that do not sound authentic at all. And it's hard being an actor. They forget their lines all the time. All they're doing is thinking about their big fat paycheck. So what are these agendas? Well, gun control, huge. Increased surveillance, huge. Restriction of rights, pushing for the digital ID so everybody will be safe. Of course, the increased police state, we should have cameras everywhere. The police going door to door, that happened with the Charlie Jerk story. Is that how I said it? And the conditioning people that it's fine that the police can just knock on your door and say, we want to come in and search. I hope you're going to say no, and you have the right to say no, except people are going to, it's for our safety. We have to do it. Are you housing a fugitive? There's a movie called The Fugitive. It has to do with Big Pharma. I recommend that you watch that. It's probably 20 years old. Yeah, you'll see about, they've been at this game a long, long time. Squelching free speech. Okay, blaming immigrants. Now, I am 100%, how do I put this? My family, and maybe your family, was a family of immigrants, legal immigrants. My heart does go out to those who sincerely are trying to get away from oppression and tyranny. Hey, I left California. Plenty of people left Cuba and the Soviet Union and other places. So, you know, I did it legally. But this constant blaming of the immigrants for all of this is another of their calling cards. The pointing everything at the Muslims and the anti-Semitism. So it's not just you won't have the ability to criticize Jewish people. They're taking away your ability to have an opinion. You are not able to think about people differently other than how the government tells you. And I did a very detailed breakdown about this in Monday's video about the Brown and Bondi incidents, where the mayor of Providence, Rhode Island, is all about anti-Semitism. And somebody told me he recently became Jewish, something like that. So I have another video called How and Why I Collect Clues. I have a video called How to Spot the PSYOPS. I've got a video called Why Would They Do This? Anyone who asks the question in the comments, but why would they do this? I want you to answer the question. I want you to think and logically answer that question, because there are so many answers. And I just gave them to you a moment ago to push those agendas. I also have a video called How Can They All Be In On It? They don't all need to be in on it because everybody falls for it. Only a few people have to be in on it. All right. You may be someone like me that likes to solve mysteries and puzzles. I naturally have an inquisitive mind. I'm curious. I see connections between things that others might miss at first. My friends and family always say that I'm ahead of the curve, and I'll point out things early on that others might not notice. And then later they're like, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't catch that. So I collect clues and evidence that other people might overlook and disregard, like the letters being shown to us backwards. That's significant to me. And if you dismiss that, you're falling right into their hands. They want you to dismiss these things. They want you to say, oh, it's nothing. There you go again, talking about numbers and colors, and because they think people will dismiss it. So I do this. I expose the PSYOPs because I can't stand having the wool pulled over my eyes. And more than that, I can't stand seeing people being carried away by their emotions and falling for this and literally having their like crying over these things. It's like, friends, please, your compassion is misplaced. I can't stand seeing other people be distressed at these stories that are obviously fake. And I can't stand the bad guys getting away with it, with furthering their evil agenda, because so many people go along with it, with what they're shown on the media. They don't question it. So I'm a teacher at heart. I always have been. So basically, I see my work of exposing the PSYOPs as a public service. It's my way of teaching and educating people, helping them develop critical thinking skills that empower them to dig deeper and not be bamboozled, duped, and hoodwinked by these manufactured, orchestrated events that are designed for one main reason. Well, many reasons, to put you in fear and terror, but to take away your freedom, to enslave you. Now, I get it. You may have bought in, maybe that's a strong of a word. You may have, the media may have done a great job of duping you with some of the previous events. There is not one mass event that I have come across that I believe is real. Not one. Okay. Not the one in Santa Barbara, not the one in Thousand Oaks. not the one in Texas, not all the ones in New York. And I've done several on this channel, and it's the same old calling card. And if you go to my checklist, how to spot a PSYOP, I have a whole checklist. Take that checklist, go back to that event and say, okay. And instead of getting upset at yourself, like, oh, I can't believe I fell for it, congratulate yourself. Hey, I'm developing critical thinking skills. I'm not going to be duped again. I may have fallen for it because the media did a great job and I wasn't really paying attention and I got swept away with my emotions and I felt for the people. You may have even donated to some of these GoFundMe's, GoFraudMe's, I guess they should be called. That's because they're praying, not praying, but they're going after your compassionate heart. There are plenty of people that you know personally that need your help. I wouldn't send it to these anonymous people that we can't vet, we can't verify that they actually need the help. So, these events often happen at emotionally important times. There's always some kind of Christmas thing, and there's some kind of, 4th of July. These things happen at ballparks and birthday parties. It's always tied to something so that they're going to, the media, the bad guys are going to mar this for you forever. So you'll forever be afraid to go to a baseball game or a football game. Remember the parade, what was that? I don't even watch that stuff. The Super Bowl parade. I broke that one down for you as well. I mean, these things don't add up. Don't fall for it, friends. So think about it. The National Guard right before Thanksgiving. So everybody wanted to talk about it at Thanksgiving. I didn't. I just deflected it. And plenty of people are not, yeah, it's true. Plenty of people don't even want to hear. I mean, they don't want to hear from me about it. So that's why I come on this channel, for the people that want to hear it. Now, the Brown and the Bondi, the Pam Bondi Beach Blanket Bingo event. And yes, I am poking fun at it because it should be exposed for what it is. Of course, leading up to the Christmas and the Jewish holidays, Shady Nook back in the day, almost to the day, back in 2012, that was December 14th, leading up to Christmas. Many of you told me that's when you woke up. It was so obvious to me from the get-go, just the names of the people, the characters. And of course, these, innocent victims showed up like a couple of days later in the same photo shoot. It's just like absurd. That's where we came up with the Robbie Parker School of Acting and the Robbie Parker Award, because he was laughing and carrying on before the cameras turned on. And that's where they came up with the meme, well, everyone grieves differently. Oh yeah, the father of a murdered child is going to go in front of the TV cameras, dry-eyed and chuckling. Not in reality, friends, not in reality. I talked about how they like to use the same names like Pam Bondi, and then they used Bondi Beach. They could have done any other beach. It's a beautiful beach. I've heard from my Australian healthy Americans who said, Peggy, you are right on. None of this adds up. You can be sure that whatever the puppet masters are cooking up, it is to distract you from what is going on elsewhere. The media wants you focused on these stories. They want us talking about Brown and Bondi and the National Guard, which is why I'm not going to really talk about it after today. I did my coverage. I'm sure there's a lot more to be exposed. I don't want to waste any more precious life essence on it. I want to do my public service, point you in the right direction. You can continue to go down that rabbit hole. As we get closer to the holidays, I'm going to have a little more uplifting content for you next week. But I just want to show you how I do my research that you can do the same. You can be sure that the media wants us to be riveted to these stories. They don't want us to see the restrictions that they're putting into place, the digital prison walls that are going up, and the gun control initiatives that are going to be pushed through, the flock cameras that are tracking your car, drone surveillance, more cameras in classrooms, and so forth. Friends, the reason I do this is because I want to put your mind at ease. That's actually what I want to do. I want to walk you off the cliff. I want to get you out of the spin cycle. My goal is to help you see that there are not random crazed gunmen shooting at random people in random places for random reasons. That's not real life. You don't need to live in fear. Now, are there actual criminals? Are there crimes? Are there shootings? Are there stabbings? Yes, there are. Crimes do happen. There are bad guys out there. I know personally people who have been the victims of crimes. You probably do too. You may yourself, it may have happened to you. Did it make headline news? Did you go on the media and call for gun control? Did you have a GoFundMe set up? This is how we can separate the fake and fraudulent, phony from the real. Those things rarely make the headlines. And if they do, it's a little blip and it goes on, and people's lives are shattered, and you're not on the TV laughing and smiling. I couldn't get out of bed after my animals passed away. I couldn't even broadcast here for weeks. I had replays. And once I came back on screen, you could see the sorrow in my eyes. It lingers. What you're seeing on the TV is not real. The media and the government love to terrorize people. What is terror? It's the threat of violence. They want you to be afraid to go to the Super Bowl parade, to the Super Bowl, to the ball games, to Christmas parties, to Bondi Beach, to universities. They want the students to live in fear. They want them to be in a police state. They want to lock them in the classrooms. Is that living in freedom? I would rather live in freedom with the threat of I would not take safety over freedom is what I'm trying to say. And I think you're probably the same. Further, terrorized, fearful people are much easier to manipulate. And they're much more willing to accept and even beg for the tyranny and oppression that they're promised in exchange, right? They're promised the peace and safety if they just give up a little more freedom. So these fake, phony, fraudulent, manufactured mass events are what I'm exposing. And that's what I'm talking about. The same old tired storylines, the same old fake bad actors, the same old fake smiling witnesses, and the same old oppressive agenda. So here's what I look for. And I've got that whole how to spot a PSYOP checklist, but when I'm doing my research, so I look for all the inconsistencies and the clues, right? You know, when did it happen? And then I start looking at the people involved. So I've got 1, 2, 3, I got half a dozen points here that I want to share with you. So the first one is I do a deep dive on the characters in the play. So I looked in we'll look at the Brown incident. And what I did is I researched the Brown University president. Like, who is this person? Because if they're going to do some kind of event there, they need to have some kind of buy-in from the police, the chief of police, as I call it, the governor, the mayor. Maybe in this case, I didn't look at the governor, but I looked at the mayor and I looked at the president. Now, I spent all day researching and writing and filming that video for you. As I say, all of my own original links, all of the research, all of the images and so forth. So I didn't have time to look at the police chief of police. I didn't have time to look at the governor. And I only looked at these two main characters, but it was enough for me. It was enough evidence for me to say that they're in on it. So I showed you that the mayor, as I say, not only was bankrolled by this gun lobby called Every Town for Gun Safety. I always look for that. What is their connection? I look for their connection to other groups like the Strong Cities Network. The Strong Cities Network I exposed in previous videos. That's a lobby group that wants to take away your guns. And they are the ones that are behind these poorly written scripts and these poorly produced plays that are being shown on the news. And it's called Strong Cities Network. And you can do research on that and you can find out what cities belong to that. And they are the ones that go in. And remember, there are people that believe in what they're doing. It's like a religion for them. There are people that believe that lying to you about what happened is for the greater good, if it means taking away guns. They believe that lying to you is worth it. Well, they're getting paid, but also they believe in big government. And I've done other videos on why people would participate. They might be criminals that are going to be promised a shorter sentence. There are plenty of these people that show up again and again and again, and they are just actors. There are people that are in the CIA that are operatives, that are government agents, and it's their job. So there are plenty of reasons why people do it. I mean, money talks. So I've done a deep dive on that previously. But I look at these individuals and they're the ones that are controlling the information. I look to see how long have they been in power? Were they recently elected, as was the case in Hawaii? So in Lahaina, there was a brand new chief of police who just happened to be at the Las Vegas fake, phony, fraudulent event. And the mayor was brand new. And he also was a shady character. And of course, the governor was brand new. And the person that was in charge of the emergency response was brand new. So they were all put there. And then, of course, some of them were knocked off bit by bit so that there would be a fall guy. So I love to dig into the characters in the play. How long have they been in power? Have they been involved in any scandals? What do they have any connection to the CIA? So the fake Mormon, it was called Meeting House shooting that I covered for you. The state senator that just happened to live right down the street from where that happened. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. She is a CIA agent. That was her entire career. And guess who she was bankrolled by? Everytown for Gun Safety. She has all of these images of herself calling for gun control. The president of Brown University has all these events calling for gun control. So obviously they believe in it. So if someone were to come to them and say, you know, we're going to do a live action exercise, and this is how it's going to go down, and it's for the greater good, and it's to take away these guns. Are you in? You know, and if you're not in on it, we're going to say that you were involved in doing bad things to children. So there's blackmail involved. There's all sorts of stuff. I don't have evidence of that for these people. I'm giving you the example of how they can coerce people to do things, but many of them believe in it. And that university president makes $3 million a year. And you're wondering why tuition is high? I'm wondering why there are even universities. I don't think we need them anymore. So I looked to see if they've been involved in other PSYOPs, like the Maui chief of police in the Vegas event. I want to look at the agendas of these individuals, like Joshi Green New Deal in Hawaii. He's gung-ho for the United Nations and climate change and build back better, burn back better. I found all of the speeches that he did at the United Nations and how he's all in favor of that. And it's like, okay, he was the top dog. Oh, I don't want to, my apologies to dogs. He was the top crook, criminal, and crony in charge when this went down in Lahaina, when they stood by and let the entire city burn. So I look at these individuals. That's where I really start my research. And then I look to see what are their connections. Are they connected to Everytown for Gun Safety? Massive gun grab, and they call it gun violence. Yeah, guns are really violent, just like cars are really reckless. They want you to believe that guns are violent, so they keep using that phrase, just like they want you to believe that vaccines are safe, which is why they keep talking about vaccine safety, vaccine safety. It should be called vaccine harms. That's what it should be called. It should be called gun protection. Guns protect us from the bad guys. So we need to change our way and reject these narratives that I defined for you early on in this broadcast. So I also look for connections to World Economic Forum, to the United Nations, to the Council on Foreign Relations. The president of Brown University is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is basically a new world disorder outfit, basically pushing toward totalitarianism and communism and so much more. So I look, these usual suspects usually crop up as I'm looking, and I find these connections with every single mass event. They're out there, and that's where I look. Then I look to see what was on the books in advance. So I go to the municipalities, I go to the city websites. And as far as I remember, I was the first person that exposed a lot of this in Lahaina, because I went to the city of Lahaina's website and I found that they already had on the books plans for a major transportation corridor. 15-minute cities, ring a bell, going right through the center of Lahaina. It had already been approved by the city council. There was already money for it. There was some resistance and reluctance. So what better way than to burn back better, get rid of the old and in with the new? So I look to see who voted for that. I look at the city council. I watch the city council meetings. That's how I do my research. This is called original research. It's called source. I'm going to the source of the research. I'm not going to ABC News other than to look at the interviews with the fake phony witnesses. But even then, I'm not getting that off Facebook. I'm doing it myself, because I don't know if somebody else took that and cut it up or it was AI. I look at the ABC interviews or CBS or whatever, and I bring that to you. But I don't rely on other websites to tell me what the city council is doing, just like I don't rely on other websites to give me a rundown on court rulings. I read the court ruling myself. That's why it takes so long to do these videos. And that's why I'm cutting back to 3 videos a week, so that I have more time to do better research and bring you better in-depth videos. You're asking me for longer videos. So certainly you're getting a longer video tonight. Then I look at the cities, the municipalities where these take place, the states, and I look at what's going on with gun control. And remember, all, meaning every single gun law is illegal. The Constitution says that there shall be nothing to restrict our right to bear arms. All of these, California is so restrictive. You can't even get a permit to carry a concealed weapon unless the sheriff in your county agrees that you have a right to do so. It's completely unconstitutional, and plenty of people are fighting out against it. Here in Florida, it's the exact opposite. You can carry a gun, open carry, and you don't need any permit, and you just can have it. And that is in accordance with the Constitution. Look, I know there are plenty of people that don't care for the Constitution. I get all your emails. I read all about that, but I'm just going to take it at face value. And we do have a law in place that I want to highlight, and that's called the Second Amendment. So I look at these states and where these things are taking place, like Utah had very, let me say, less restrictive gun control laws. But after what happened with the Charlie Jerk incident, is that how I said it? You can bet that those laws are going to be changed. And you bet that they're going to be more restrictive they already took the guns away in Australia after a previous fake event. I think that was like a couple decades ago. I'll have to look into that more. Same thing in England. And they didn't have that in their constitution. And that's why they're pushing so hard in the United States, because we're the last man standing. So I researched the history of gun control in these states, especially related to the mass bang bang events. And remember, friends, these bad guys work on a principle called incrementalism. They have their plans in place for years, for decades, for centuries. So the president of Brown University in 2013 convened a gun violence event in the aftermath of the Shady Nook event. So that's the domino. Those are the dominoes that are set up. You get that set up, and you get the next event. And she was calling for increased safety and security at the school. Well, even if we take her at her word, she certainly did a bad job of it. But it's all timed out. It's all in place. So even if you and I get to keep our guns, even if we get to keep our guns in years to come, you can better believe that they're working on manipulating this for years and decades down the road. Keep your eye out for more of the mass stabbing events. Remember that other fake thing on the subway? Oh, you didn't know that one was fake? Yeah. Watch it again. There are plenty of Substacks that have broken that down. It wasn't real, and they're actors, and it doesn't add up. And they're going to promote a lot of these stabbing events as well, so that it can go after your knives. I also look for the tie-in for increased surveillance, the flock cameras that are tracking your every move. I want to thank one of my Healthy Americans in particular that is sending me information about the flock cameras, what's going on with our cars, how they are controlling us. And I plan on spending some time researching that a little bit more, because I think it's interesting for me. I think it will be for you as well, what we can do to push back against that. There is increased surveillance, and more people, they welcome that. Personally, well, I don't want to talk too much about my own personal protection and privacy, but let me just say that I'm not too worried if a bad guy comes to the door, and I certainly don't need a camera to warn me, because those cameras are recording you, and your Siri and Alexa are recording everything you say. I think you already know that. I know the phone is, I know the computer is, but I try to minimize it where I can. So people are more willing to live in a prison society if they're told it's for their own safety and security. And as for me, I choose freedom over security every single time. A couple more things here. I look to see if there were any active shooter drills recently. And in the fake Mormon one that I covered for you a month ago or so, they all blur one into the other. I barely can keep track of them all. And I don't have to break down every single one, because it's like overwhelming. And they want you to be overwhelmed. That's the other thing. They want you to think that a bad guy is around every corner and nowhere is safe. So the best is to turn off the news, not watch it, go tend your garden, play with your kids, your pets, cook a nice meal, go for a walk. engage in some hobbies, watch The Healthy American a couple times a week, and Living Swell on Fridays, and take care of yourself. And don't give your life over to these bad guys. So with that Mormon event, not only talking about the active shooter drills, in the very small town, I think it had a few thousand people in it, where the CIA senator happened to live. And she was bankrolled by the Everytown for Gun Safety. And it was the first time that a Democrat senator had gotten that seat. So a lot, again, that's what I look for. Did they just come into power? She had just come into power recently. That town actually has an organization with our tax dollars, by the way, that runs the active shooter drills. Just a quinky dink, everybody. Don't make anything out of it. Some people tell me, there you go again, Peggy, making a mountain out of a molehill. That's significant. So I looked to see, because what we were shown at that Brown event, it looked like, and who was filming it on their cell phone? Who knows? Somebody was filming it on their cell phone. Everybody else had their hands up in the air. Stop, officer, don't shoot. I was just going to Akron at the airport. The TSA wants me to put my hands up. They're conditioning you to do that. Somebody's filming, very poor quality. I could show you videos on my cell phone, crystal clear. How come every single video we see on the media from a cell phone is grainy? Because they don't want you to identify anybody, and they want it to look like it was done in a panic. So somebody was filming this, and it looked like an active shooter drill. It looked so fake and phony. It's, I mean, it's beyond. So you can't make this stuff up. Okay, I've talked about the witnesses a lot, but I always look for the witnesses. I look at the victims, and I look to see if they have shown up in other places. So this category deserves its very own video, and I will bring that to you sometime. I have compiled video of the same witness with a different name playing the mother at the Parkland shooting. I hope you don't fall for that one. Then she showed up at the Thousand Oaks event, which was also right after the fires, and she had a different name. And then she showed up like as a victim. So in those places, she was the witness. Then she was the victim in the hospital. And you can tell it's her because she has some very distinguishing features, like certain teeth are missing, and she has marks on her face that it's like, you know, defining characteristics. You're like, they don't even try to hide it. That's the level of mockery and ridicule that they will go to, and people fall for it. There are plenty of these crisis actors that show up again and again. So, and then of course, not only the crisis actors, but like the Maui chief of police happen to be in Las Vegas, happen to be in Lahaina. And you guys are telling me that Vegas, of course, was in the Eric Kirk music video that I broke down for you. And that was where the Bang Bang event happened. So they recycle the storylines over and over again. The puppet masters love to mock and ridicule the public by intentionally doing this. So when I'm researching these things, I'll start to see connections. And then that will lead me to collecting more clues and more digging. And do I have all the answers? No. And as I've said many times, I don't need to have all the answers. I just need enough evidence to go, oh, there's another one. You know, in a court of law, does that even exist anymore? Do we have courts of law that are actually legitimate? I don't know. A reasonable doubt is enough to throw out a case. A reasonable doubt. So I doubt that those victims and witnesses that I showed you in Monday's video were authentic. It's not going to hold up muster. That would not fly in a court of law if that even exists anymore. All of these fake, phony, fraudulent, staged manufactured sensationalized events, there are tons of clues. You just have to look for them. And there are tons of reasonable doubts. And I'm much more interested in asking questions that can't be answered than in not asking questions at all, or being told that I can't ask questions, that I'm being insensitive, that I don't have a right, that I don't have a right to an opinion. I have a feeling you feel like I do, and asking questions is important. So let me know what I've missed here. Let me know in a comment how you do your research. What are your go-to websites? Are you like me? Do you go to the original research? I really am grateful for you all sending me your clues and so forth. But aside from once in a rare event, I don't have time to watch other YouTubers' videos and other content creators' videos. I will kind of glance at it because I appreciate you sending that to me. But often I don't know who these people are. I haven't vetted them. I don't know if what they're saying like is valid. And I, again, have to use my own kind of discernment. So the video that I shared with you in Monday's broadcast from a creator on Instagram called reality.revolt, I believe he's French. Well, he's speaking in French. And his are very well done. I don't know how he does his research. And there are a couple other people that will just like, people will show me TikTok videos, which I really don't put a lot of stock into, because a lot of these TikTokers will see somebody else's video and then just repeat what somebody else said and repeat what somebody else said. It's not original. And sometimes I'm looking at that going, how did they get that info? It's almost like some kind of intelligence info was fed to them or something. So where do you get your research? Where do you do your research? I shared with you where I do mine. And that's why it's not always seamless. And I probably miss a few things here or there. But again, I don't need to get to the bottom of everything. I just kind of need to do a cursory look and go, oh, this does not add up. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I hope this was a public service. I love hearing from you. And you know that I'm here Mondays and Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, Fridays over at my other channel, Living Swell, 5 p.m. Pacific, and always at the Substack. I want to take a look at your comments here since we are looking. Oh, this is great. Big E says, firstly, I use multiple search engines. Excellent tip. I need to do that as well. Yandex is less censored. Okay, I'll have to look at that. Great. Ned says, anyone watching mainstream media needs a wake-up call. Oh my gosh, you are so right. PS says, why do they use the same people over and over? Maybe they're the only ones that will do it. Maybe because they think they're good on camera. They're certainly lousy on camera. They probably are a part of the intelligence community. They're probably the children of CIA agents. People are so, I don't want to say brain dead. So I'll just, people are brain dead and they can use the same people over and over because most people don't notice, only you and me. Let's see. Okay, Virtual says, I called the company to tell them that I knew they were training people in fake stuff. That's Virtual, dude. I love that. And you know, so many of my Healthy Americans helped me take down Andrew Dodo Bird, who we're told is behind prison bars. I don't even know if he is. We're told he's in prison. But because you called that other fake company that got $10 million or something, and I showed you on the screen that they got that this fake nonprofit was not providing any services. All they had were links to other organizations that actually provided services like food and medicine and all of that. And I called them. I never even got a phone call back. And I asked you guys to call them as well. And many of you did. So that's the other thing, is calling the companies and just going right to the source. I love that, Virtual, dude. Valerie, thank you. She says, one of our moderators, she says, the Thomas Jefferson quote, I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. Perfect. That's it exactly. Rhonda and Valerie are here day in, day out. Let's give them a big round of applause. I want to thank everybody who joined us tonight. I love the live streams. I am, as you can hear, kind of losing my voice because I'm going a little bit longer in these videos. Ned says you quite often can't see the forest for the trees. That's why there's so much trauma in the news. And they use that to their advantage to prey on people. So thank you, everybody, for being on board. Join me on Friday. I want to talk about how to deal with difficult people. So you might be trying to talk to people about these things, or maybe you have people in your life that are just driving you bonkers. I want to be of service. I want to do something that's helpful for your life. We're not going to talk about the headlines. I don't want to give any more of my time and energy over to the news and to these events. So let's talk about you and me and the people in our lives and how we can improve our relationships, protect our peace. That's like a number one, not let anyone steal our joy, especially the difficult people. So I'll see you there on Friday. Next week, we're coming up on Christmas week. On Monday and Wednesday, I will have broadcasts for you, and they're going to be a little more lighthearted. And I hope you'll join me then as well. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you to all my Healthy Americans. And I look forward to seeing you in Friday's broadcast. See you soon, everybody.